My name is Paul, and I'm one of the pastors here in this church. And we're currently going through a series on the Gospel of Mark entitled Christ's Power Over Every Need. And when you hear that phrase, some of you are like, yep, I need that. There are circumstances and situations, maybe either physical, health-related, or anxiety, or just tension in marriage. You're just like, I feel powerless. Lord, I need you. And if you are here today with that, may the Lord use his word that you can experience his power. But for others of you, it might not be pain points. It might not be something that significantly is just right heavy in front of you. But as I'm talking to people, there are different kinds of needs that often stir up, and there's longings. And maybe you're there today. These longings of, oh, I wish I was in a relationship, or married, or had kids, or I wish I had a financial situation where I wasn't feeling so burdened and where things felt so tight. And you're always chasing after, pursuing like, I'm unhappy, I wish I had that. I want to share this quote with you from Robert Holden, and he gave a TED Talk, and he describes this language and called destination addiction. And some of you might have this. And he says, beware of destination addiction, a preoccupation with the idea that happiness is in the next place, the next job, or with the next partner. Until you give up the idea that happiness is somewhere else, it will never be where you are. Some of you are listening to that, you're like, I've got destination addiction. I'm not happy. I'm feeling like I'm always something else is out there. Is this all that it's all about? And Christianity is not simply about, don't be futuristic and just focus on the things here and now and just be focused. It is that, but more than that, it's saying what you're longing for is Jesus. Your longings can be found in him who is the Lord over the present and in your future. So as we go through the Gospel of Mark, may his word be used to address with his power, Christ's power over every need. And today we're going to be looking at this passage, Mark chapter 1, 35 to 45. And before we read it, just two things. First, this is about Jesus' early morning prayer that leads to his expanding ministry to all of Galilee and is followed by a very focused vignette of Christ's healing of a leper. And as we read it, the second thing is there's a key phrase that Peter says to Jesus, I just want you to take note of. And it's this phrase, everyone's looking for you. So with that said, Mark chapter 1, 35 to 45, let me read it. This is God's word. And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him, and they found him and said to him, everyone's looking for you. And he said to them, let us go on to the next towns that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out. And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. And a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, if you will, you can make me clean. Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I will be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was made clean. And Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once and said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priests and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for a proof to them. But he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places and people were coming to him from every quarter. This is God's word. So the phrase here, everyone's looking for you. You see, all these people were coming to Jesus. He's healing, he's teaching, and everyone's like, oh, we're coming for you. And maybe you're part of that everyone here today. They're coming, they're looking for you. They have these expectations of you. They have these longings and their needs. They're saying, Jesus, meet my needs. And if that is you today, you're part of this group of everyone looking for you. Here's the outline that we will consider as we look at our passage. If you are here today looking for Jesus because you have needs, number one, Jesus may disappoint you. Number two, this doesn't mean that he does not care about you. And number three, in light of the gospel, you're called to trust and obey. So let's look at this, the first one. You're coming to Jesus, you're looking for him, you got these needs, and first thing here to note is that Jesus may disappoint you. So in verses 35 to 39, And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. In Mark's gospel, 3 times only mentioned, Jesus is in a solitary place praying. Here's one of them, Mark chapter 6, after the feeding of the 5,000, and Mark chapter 14, when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane. Each of those moments are pivotal for huge opposition or ministry things that's about to happen in the story and the life and the ministry of Jesus. So he highlights that. And then in verse 36, and Simon and those who are with him searched for him. And I italicize Simon and those who are with him because I think this is one of the reasons why we know that the person who wrote this is really Peter's account through the pen biography of Mark. Because it's only Simon's name that's mentioned. Simon and the others. It's almost like you can imagine Simon sharing this account of Jesus and Mark's writing it down, and Simon's like, yeah, that morning it was me and, the other bros. It was me and the other guys. They were there too. So it just kind of gives you this indication. It's like, okay, Simon, your name, no one else. And it says here that they searched for him. And that word search is anemic and weak. It can be translated hunting down for him. That's vivid. And they were hunting, they're pressing in, hunting for him. And they found him and said to him, everyone's looking for you. And he said to them, let us go on to the next towns that I may preach there also, for that is why I came out. And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. So notice here that Jesus disappoints everyone who's been looking for him. Everyone's looking for him. Everyone's got expectations. Peter's looking for him, hunting him down and saying, dude, this is the moment. This is what we were praying for. We're getting big time here. And everyone's looking for him, and Jesus disappoints. We're going to go to Galilee. And everyone's like, what's going on? And maybe that's your experience today. Perhaps you're a follower of Jesus and there's this disappointment of this kind of standoffness with Jesus because you had these needs and longings and they haven't been met. Or maybe you're here, you're back at church, maybe you grew up going to church, but you kind of dropped the faith, and what's holding you back is there were part of your story were these deep needs and longings, and you were going to Jesus, but he disappointed you. And if that's your experience, you're not the only one. I struggle with this too. And maybe for you, this might be the key lesson to take away today. That if you're disappointed, you may have confused your agenda with Jesus' agenda. Jesus is not about meeting your agenda, but following his Father's agenda. So a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, when you have confused your agenda with Jesus' agenda, you will be either mad or sad. So James Edwards, he wrote a commentary. It's a great commentary on the Gospel of Mark. He says here, the Greek word behind looking for occurs 10 times in Mark, and each instance it carries negative connotations. It connotes an attempt to determine and control rather than submit and follow. Whoa. You see, what's happening here is looking for, is that you? Not submitting and trusting, but like to determine, to control. Like, Jesus, I'm looking for you. I have this set expectation of what you need to do. And when that's not being met, you will be mad. You'll be mad because Jesus is not following your agenda, or you'll be sad. You're just confused and disoriented, like, Jesus, did I do something wrong? What's going on? And that language there is telling. Could that also be why you're experiencing disappointment? This control, this sense of how you know best. Second thing to note is while we might not know exactly what Jesus' agenda might be for a specific need, we can be sure that it will not be to feed or fuel our idols. Jesus wants to free you from these idols. So with my youngest son, we once a week we'll get together, do a check-in, kind of pray together, talk about life, anything he wants to discuss, just to listen. And so this past week we met, and one of the verses we looked at was 1 John chapter 5, verse 21, in the epistle, 1 John. And John, that's the last verse of the letter. And some of you know what that verse is. He closes it out by saying, dear children, keep yourself from idols. Stay away from idols. Because an idol is a good thing, but when it becomes a main thing, we find our meaning and purpose in life. And listen, friends, Jesus is not going to meet your needs if it fuels and fires those idols. Oh, my idol for approval in this, or for security, or for comfort in these different things. He's not here to fuel and feed your idol. He wants to free you from those things, to find out and know that the ultimate sense of security and comfort and joy and approval and love and meaning and purpose is found in Him. So just to keep that in mind as you're struggling and wrestling with this kind of disappointment and what the intention of God. Third, if you're struggling with letting go of your agenda, if you're here and look, there might be some things where these longings are significant and they're not trivial, and you're holding on, it's really hard. And if you are finding yourself like that, part of the letting go, what's so hard is, no, God, I have this plan. You got to meet this. I know what's best. And there's this deep sense of control for security. If this comes together, then everything will be okay. This is the way we're going to solve the problem. This is the way for all of this. And all idols will fail you. And so if you find yourself letting it go, hard time letting it go, dear friends, go to the gospel. And look at Jesus, who's going to be your ultimate security. These things in this world, they might be good and important, but they cannot secure your soul. But look to the one who lived and died for you to make you his own, that on the cross, in the greatest moment of struggle and trial and pain, he did not let up, he didn't let go, but he held on and to make you his forever. And let that take a hold of your heart as you struggle to let go. So a couple of quotes here. Corrie ten Boom wrote, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God," to Jesus. And Thomas Brooks, who's a Puritan, wrote, "Our safety and security lie not in our weak holding upon Christ, but in Christ holding us fast in his everlasting arms." We went through the book of Hebrews last year. Jesus is our firm anchor, and he's the one who holds us fast. One more thought on this point before moving on. One way that God aligns our agenda with his is through prayer. So, verse 35, "And rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed." So one of the things when we're struggling with my agenda, Jesus' agenda, and the way he aligns that is going to be through prayer. We're going to be, Noah just mentioned, we're going to have a growth group on prayer. And it's in prayer that it gets alignment to like, Lord, your will. So let me share with you what that like looks for me. When I think and pray in the morning about the Lord's Prayer, it starts off with saying, your kingdom come, your will be done. It's about you. Then Jesus says, give us this day our daily bread. And so it aligns that way. And practically speaking, if this is helpful for you, let me share some of the ways that what I kind of go through in my own spiritual kind of rhythms. I'll wake up in the morning, I look at my schedule, and I think about all the different meetings I'm going to have that are planned and unplanned. I think about moments where I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be thinking about moments I'm going to catch up with my wife, my kids, phone calls. And I think about all these different opportunities where I might be tempted to be defensive, that I might be tempted to criticize, that I might be tempted not to love. And I'm praying to God, Lord, in those moments, help me to align my purpose to yours and be present with the gospel. What would it mean for me to be in that meeting and to listen and not feel like I'm going to be defensive? What would it mean to be in this conversation with my kids and not be criticizing or writing them off, but listening well? Another way that I kind of frame this is this idea of kind of looking ahead. And if this is helpful for you, please consider using this practice. If not, then don't. But I've had moments or days in my life when I'll reflect and I go, man, I really blew that one. And there's a sense of regret. I should not have said that. I think about, I just forgot the gospel. I need Jesus. And so in the morning time, I'll think about what it might look like in the evening time, reflecting on my day in areas in which I may have, because I know that I forget the gospel, I have gospel amnesia, that I've done things that I regret, said things I regret, I didn't respond in love, I was too passive. And I think about what a gift it would be in that morning, with that in mind, that God would give me a second chance to live this day. what a gift it would be to look at this day and go, well, I know here is this day before me. How would I live it for you, not with the regrets, but living in line? Lord, make your mission mine as I'm walking and depending and repenting and leaning on you for what I do. So those are just some of the ways for me about just aligning in prayer my agenda with his. So that's the first point. So if you're here today looking for Jesus because you have needs, Jesus may disappoint you. But secondly, this doesn't mean that he does not care about you. So in verses 40 and 42, Mark gives no transition. He doesn't go, they went to Galilee and then spent a couple of days and they went to this town. He's like, boom, he goes right into it. And then there's this account of a leper. And a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, if you will, you can make me clean. Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I will be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him and he was made clean. Now, with this reading, one, leprosy was a big deal and this engagement was a highly provocative and offensive encounter. It's very tempting to read through Mark and he's like, immediately this happened. You're just moving. It's like going so fast, you're just like, you can't even process stuff. And I want you to think about this passage. You go, oh yeah, leper, sins, I know what's going to happen. But I want you to pause for a moment and hear this out, that this encounter was highly provocative and it was an offensive moment. It was an intense moment. And here's the reason why. According to James Edwards, lepers were victims of far more than the disease itself. The disease robbed them of their health, and the sentence imposed on them as a consequence robbed them of their name, occupation, habits, family, and fellowship, and worshiping community. To ensure against contact with society, lepers were required to make their appearance as repugnant as possible. Josephus speaks of the banishment of lepers as those in no way differing from a corpse, the living dead. In other words, when a leper came, everyone was like, oh, move away. And it was so accosting, the visualization and the odor and just everything in place. They were just like, it was highly offensive and highly charged. People were going to be looking at Jesus, dude, what are you doing? Move aside. And it was such the case that lepers had to stand at a distance of 50 paces, according to the rabbinical teaching, because of the disease that could spread, because of the social pariah. And they wore a bell around their neck as a warning, shouting, leper. This was an intense encounter. It was a provocative encounter. And with that, Jesus' response to the leper reflects his deep care. It says that he was moved with pity. And in the Greek, the word used there is the word splankna. I just like saying that word. It just sounds like rolls off like splankna. It means stomach, your bowels. And it's used to speak of you're in your gut. Your core being is what it's saying. And as I just mentioned, what an offensive counter this might be, Jesus is portrayed as compassionate to the core, the splankna. The man with leprosy would have turned the stomachs of others with disgust, but he turned the stomach of Jesus with love. Next, he stretched out his hand and touched him. This was probably the first human touch this man had received in years. And according to Jewish law, if this man was unclean, if he touched anyone, that person's unclean. Whoever you touch, you're unclean. Everyone you touch, unclean. This is the first and only time this unclean man touches Jesus, and his uncleanness doesn't go to him, but Jesus' cleanness goes to him, and now he's made clean. Such is the power of Jesus. But how meaningful you can imagine this person. Now, we're in San Diego. And people in San Diego love dogs. Yeah, we do. We love dogs. And, you may have seen maybe videos of these dogs who are cast aside or abused, and they try to be restored to find a home. It's really touching and moving. And you see a dog shaking in fear if you try to touch, or they're so fearful or angry, they just out of fear, they bite back. And that's just such a picture of our own souls. Right? There's a fear inside of anyone coming in, and the touch of Jesus. His power and his gentleness and his care just moves towards this man with his pain and longing, with Jesus who reaches out and touches. And then we're told that Jesus says, I am willing. When this man said, if you will, you can make me clean. In the Bible, only God can clean and cure leprosy. No human being can. The story of Naaman in 2 Kings 5, you could read that later. God can, no one else can. So he's like, something about you, Jesus, if you can. And this is not Jesus saying, like, I'm not able to. Of course I am, I'm the Lord. But my desire, my compassion, I am willing. So Jesus is not only able but desirous, even knowing the mixed intentions and imperfections of this man and what his response was going to be in just a moment. I think in another, if I could look back, I may have considered in college, I was a history major, maybe minoring in art history. And these are just two paintings I want to just have you take a look at, because you see painters, people, artists captured in their imagination of this account because it was so poignant and provocative. The first one is by a French painter named James Tillot, and it highlights this man reaching out. And the one on the right is by Rembrandt. It's a napkin sketch that he did. And I want to just share that with you because for me, it helps me think about this passage in such a way that goes, the care of Jesus, the deep compassion of Jesus. Even as you wrestle with the need and you feel like he's disappointed you. And so that raises this following question and struggle. Some of you might be thinking, hey, Jesus cared for this person, and that's why he met his needs. But Jesus is not meeting my needs, so he must not care about me. And if you find yourself going that route, which I am guilty of having done as well, some thoughts to share with you. First, just because Jesus is not meeting your needs does not mean that he does not care. All of you who are parents know this. If your kid or your young kid or a teenager, you gave them everything they asked for, a young kid, all the candy in the world, all the toys that they want, and you don't give, that would be really bad for their character, for their well-being. And because you love them, you actually say no. For your character, I don't love. So we know this to be true. And so just because Jesus is not meeting your needs does not mean that he does not care. So when I think about God's no, I'm just processing this week. I mentioned this one last week. He says no to Jesus. In Matthew 26:39, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. Going a little further, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Jesus is thinking about the horror of being separated eternally from the Trinity, from his Abba Father. And experiencing the wrath of God as he takes upon our sin, and the horror of that reality sinking in. He's like, Lord, if it's possible, is there another way? Let this cup, and God says no. And for me, that no helps frame how I process things with no's in my life. Because it doesn't mean that he doesn't love me. I might not know why he says no, but one thing I know for certain is that he doesn't care. He loves me, I know for certain, even in the midst of it all. So God's no to Jesus. Here's the second one. Distinguish between a request and a need. Here I want to talk about God's no to the Apostle Paul. In 2 Corinthians, Paul goes to pray. And Paul is, come on, he's like the honorary fourth member of the Trinity, right? Come on. His prayers, this is going to be significant. Lord, 3 times I've got this need, this thorn in my flesh. Will you remove it? And he prays that, and what happens? 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. So what's happening here is God says no to his request, but yes to his need. Paul's like, here's my request, this thorn, would you take it away? And God's like, no. But what was his need? Would you take it away so that I could be more powerful in the ministry and be used for your glory? Would you take it away so that that could happen? And God says no to the request, yes to the need. Because what does he say? My grace is sufficient for you. And my power is made perfect in your weakness. What you need, what you're asking for, is to be effective in the ministry, yeah, I'm answering that. No to the request, yes to the need. That's been helpful for me. But I also know that's really hard because there's a lot of hard pain points and brokenness in life. But I've found that to be helpful in reflecting on these moments of disappointment. Third, God's no can be a way to help you differentiate your agenda from his. A no doesn't mean God doesn't hear or care about our prayers. It simply means he has a different plan. I recently enrolled in a doctorate in ministry program at Covenant Seminary on ministry and leadership. And it's a lot of the folks in this cohort are people in full-time ministry. So it's spacing it out with a lot of work, but you're doing, you're on the job. You're doing things. So I got my first assignment for the first class the week. It's going to be in May. I got my reading assignment of 9 books and it's 3,000 pages. Okay, here we go. So I just finished reading one of the books this past week, and it's a book called Leadership on the Line by Martin Linsky. It's not a Christian book, but helpful. And one of the insights that I gleaned from is when he talks about leadership, when you get so absorbed in it all, he uses this phrase, get on the balcony. Get on the balcony and get perspective of what's happening. Because so much you're absorbed in it. And I think about this moment here, that when we're caught up in it, we're struggling with the disappointment, you got to get up on the balcony and get perspective to say, I don't understand what's going on, but I do know the story of the gospel, and the arc of the story is that God, you love me from the foundations of the earth. You have come to restore and heal me, and you're going to make all things new, and your love will never stop pursuing me until I'm your own. And I think about that story and get on the balcony and go, okay, then my story is rooted into this story. And while I might struggle with understanding this moment because I'm in it, Lord, help me to get on the balcony to see my story part of your great story and to get perspective on it. So those are just some thoughts that I found that I need, and perhaps it's going to be helpful for you. Well, let's look at the third. If you're here today looking for Jesus because you have needs, Jesus may disappoint you. Your agenda, his agenda. This doesn't mean that he does not care about you. And third, in light of the gospel, you are called to trust and obey. So in verses 43 to 45, and Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once. The word sternly charged him, it's also anemic. It could be translated scolded. The literal word for sternly charged is snorting. You ever had someone intensely talk to you that their nostrils are flaring? Yeah. And so Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away. That phrase is used in other instances to drive away, to show them the door. It's like, what? And he said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for a proof to them. And that word, say nothing to anyone, same dynamics of the words used from last week's passage when Jesus says to the demon-possessed man in the synagogue, zip it, don't talk about this. But then in verse 45, but he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places and people were coming to him from every quarter. Jesus gives his command. He goes, yeah, right, no, and he does something else. Now, as you listen to this, you might be thinking this. Wow, this is really jarring. We just read about Jesus' deep compassion and care. Why is he so intense and harsh in commanding this man to not say anything about what just happened? How do we make sense of caring Jesus and intense Jesus? I don't like this one. And so just a couple of thoughts as you wrestle with this, as I've been and I wrestle with this. Number one, Jesus' authority is not contrary but complementary to his care. He is both lion and the lamb. See, one of the great dangers is that we have a God, a Jesus of our imagination, a one-dimensional figure of what we expect Jesus to be. And here is Peter blowing those categories away and saying, hey, here's my account. This is what happened. Like, whoa, this happened. And it's like, what? Jesus is not a God of our imagination. Yes, he is so caring. Yes, he is the Lord. He is both lion and the lamb. So quoting some of these, some quotes here from C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia. If you haven't read The Chronicles of Narnia, you just need to. It's time to read. It's beautiful and powerful. And speaking of Aslan, so you might not get it, you got to read the book, the series. But of Aslan, the lion, the figure, a way to understand God. So safe, Lucy, one of the Pevensies, again, you got to read the book. She's looking at Aslan and she's like, oh my gosh, is he safe? And Mr. Beaver, you got to read the book. Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you. And another part, he'll be coming and going. One day you'll see him, and another you won't. He doesn't like being tied down. He'll often drop in. Only you must impress him. He's wild, you know, not like a tame lion. And so you see in Jesus here both the lion and the lamb. Now that said, let me highlight here this huge theme of understanding the Gospel of Mark. The silence motif. Throughout this gospel, you're going to scratch your head wondering, why is Jesus constantly mentioning to people, don't say anything. Don't say anything. You would think people would be like, dude, you're awesome, Jesus. Let's go and tell people. Don't say anything. You're like, what? Well, it's such a significant theme in the Gospel of Mark. Let me share a couple of reasons to understand. One, the word spreading with the crowds was not advancing the gospel, but actually preventing it from moving forward. The crowd, the word spreading, actually was preventing the gospel to move forward. It was a hindrance to it. So Michael Card, singer, theologian, commentary, the best of Jesus' call to preach the good news is being eclipsed by the good of his ability to heal. Yes, Jesus cares about the people. Yes, the signs of the kingdom. Yes, compassion. Yes, healing. All those different things. But it was being eclipsed by, you and I need transformation. You and I need forgiveness. You need to be made restored whole by the power of the gospel in our lives. And it was being eclipsed. So that's one of the reasons to understand. But here's the second one. Mark's intent in writing this gospel, structure-wise, I mentioned this in the beginning, in the introduction, but upon Jesus' death on the cross, the centurion explains, truly this man was the Son of God. The whole point of the Gospel of Mark is look at Jesus, and people are wondering, who is he? And like the disciples are confused. All the outsiders understand who Jesus is. All the religious people don't understand. And it culminates when Jesus, his death on the cross, and the centurion, no less, makes the profound confession that says, truly this man is a Son of God. And Mark's like, that's the point. In other words, without the full story of the cross and salvation, you will have the wrong story about Jesus and tell the wrong story about Jesus. You see, that's what Mark is trying to get at. Like, oh my gosh, Jesus is awesome, doing all this stuff. But if you don't understand Jesus, and until the full story, you're going to have a distorted story. You're going to have the wrong story. Don't go around telling people about Jesus. But notice after this happens, what's the whole thing that happens afterwards? Jesus says, go and tell everyone. Go to the nations and preach the gospel. Make disciples of everyone. Why? Because of who Jesus is. Unless you know the full grasp of the story of salvation and his movement and death on the cross and resurrection, you're going to have the wrong story, and you're going to tell the wrong story. So that's one of Mark's intent. So that being said, let's come back to this, of the idea of obedience. Mark's recording of the healed leper's disobedience should sober us. After Jesus sternly warns him and not to say anything, we're told in verse 45, but he went out and began to talk freely about it and to spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter. But he went out. Now, I don't know the full intent. Maybe he's just super excited, but I think there might be something more. Going out, it's kind of like my youngest son would say, dude, this guy's yapping. Okay, that's Gen Z language. He's a yapper. He's just yapping about, and Again, this is just me wondering, but like he's yapping around. Why? Because he's like, oh, I got my 2 minutes of fame. Time to capitalize, get those Instagram followers, make money, seize the moment. Yeah, look what happened to me. Again, I'm just kind of processing this, so that Jesus could no longer do that. So as I say that, James Edwards in his commentary says, whether the man followed the prescribed rite of cleansing, we are not told. What we are told is that he broke Jesus' command. After he has been healed by Jesus, the leper's earnestness and humility turn to complacency, even disregard. And when I think about that, man, that hits home. I don't know about you, but I know I'm guilty of this. Jesus, this need, I'm praying. Oh, thank you. Okay, moving on. And if you've ever experienced any situation where someone comes to your need and you address that need and just kind of move on, sometimes you just feel used. You just go, oh, okay. You just came for me for my need, that's it. And if we feel that, well, kind of think about this context. Again, so it's sobering. And so this final point to close with is, as we're called to trust Jesus and obey, the gospel addresses both our obedience and our disobedience. It addresses our obedience, to obey and trust Jesus in the midst of it all, not because it's a way to earn his favor, not because it's a way to make sure that we're going to be good, but because we know that we're known, loved, and accepted through the gospel of grace. Paul Tripp talks about how in any human relationship, he says, it's a burden. Like, you always have to manage it. Like, are we good? In your marriage or with your kid, are we good? Oh, did I step on your toes? At work, are we good? Pressure comes in, are we good? And you're always managing relationships and making sure, he says that's a burden that we're always thinking about. He says, but not with the gospel. That in the gospel, you can know that you're known, loved, and accepted completely because of what Jesus Christ has done. How can we know that to be sure? It's really interesting at the end of this passage you just read. Did you note that essentially the leper and Jesus trade places? This man who is an outsider is healed and now he can go into the town. But as a result, Jesus is kicked out as an outsider. My friends, that is the gospel. We who are outsiders, unclean in our own sin, Jesus heals us. So we who are outsiders, the way that we become insiders, it results in the fact that Jesus, who is clean, the ultimate insider, took upon our sin and became an outsider. That's how we can know. And when it comes to our disobedience, apply that with the gospel. The gospel says this, we are all guilty of this one leper who's done the same. Yapping around, disregarding his commands, not obeying, disobedient. And the good news of the gospel says that God doesn't hold a grudge against you for your disobedience, nor does he regret it. Jesus doesn't look at this guy and go, oh gosh, I should not have healed that dude. Oh, man, I regret that moment. No, the whole point is he knows that we're broken in our disobedience. That is why the gospel is true and good. So instead of this person, in light of the gospel, may we be like the leper in Luke 17, when 10 are healed. One comes back, falls down at the feet of Jesus, gives thanks and says, Jesus, thank you. I worship you because you are a God of grace. And so we can do that, knowing that even in our disobedience, we have a Savior who extends his grace to us because of the work of the gospel. So in closing, if you are here today looking for Jesus because you have needs, Jesus may disappoint you. Maybe that might be you today. This doesn't mean that he doesn't care about you. And in light of the gospel, you're called to trust and obey. Would you consider what the takeaway is from this passage for you today? That after this service, if someone says, hey, you went to church today? What was the message about? What did you take away? What do you think God's teaching you from this passage here today? Pray with me.